Hey guys, we had an outstanding question in class the other day that I would love to go into a little bit more detail about. The question was, I bought this skein of yarn that came like this. And when I tried to unwind it and unravel it and find where the end was, it was this big jumbled mess. Why is yarn even coming this way? How am I supposed to work with it? This is an outstanding question. So yarn that comes twisted up like this, see how pretty that looks? This is called a hank. Some people do refer to it as a skein as well, but doesn't that just look so pretty? Isn't that beautiful? That's very different compared to what you would typically find in any sort of normal craft store where yarn comes a little bit more like this. This is also called a skein. When yarn comes like this, you can pull the yarn directly from the center of the skein or unravel it from the outside of the skein. And you can use it just like this, no extra prep is needed. However, when it comes like this, you cannot work directly from a hank. You do first have to wind it into either a ball or a cake. This can be done by hand. When you do it by hand, you'll get more of a traditional ball like this. Or you can do it with a Swift and a yarn winder. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. But when you do that, you're going to get more of a cake. I hope you can see that. That yarn is a little dark, but it's flat on the top and bottom, so it sits straight. From something like this, you can still pull the yarn from the center or unwind it from the outside as well, just like you would a regular skein. So why does yarn come like this to begin with? A lot of yarn manufacturers will choose to do it this way so that the yarn is under less tension. When yarn is in more of a skein like this, it's usually pulled a little bit tighter. It can cause the yarn to stretch out a little bit. When it's like this, it's in a more natural state so that it's not under too much tension. It's not going to stretch out quite as much. How much do you need to worry about that? That's up to you. But if you do wind this by hand into how I described more of like a ball, it's very easy for the yarn in the ball to be under a bit more tension as well. Because you're doing it by hand, you may be pulling it a little bit more tighter than you would want to. That's why using a yarn Swift and a ball winder is going to help to reduce that amount of tension that you're putting on the yarn. So let's take a look and see how we're going to wind one of these up. Okay, so let's wind up a hank of yarn together. Two things you're going to need to do this. One is going to be a yarn Swift. Now, when you look up a yarn Swift on the internet, it's likely not going to look like this one. More commonly, you're going to see ones that are big and expand almost like this big umbrella. I do not own one of those. This is a different variation of the yarn Swift. This is called an Amish Swift. The reason that I went with the Amish Swift instead of a more traditional one is because at the time I was living in a small apartment. This one breaks apart a little bit better than a traditional yarn Swift, and it's a little easier to pack away, in my opinion. Now that's why I use the Amish Swift. You're also going to need a yarn winder. It has this little crank, it's going to spin, and this is what's going to create our cakes. You can usually find some pretty inexpensive ones out there. But they're definitely an investment, especially if you're going to be using a lot of, if you're going to be purchasing a lot of yarn that comes in hanks. So I've got this beautiful red, white, and blue hank here. And we're going to unravel it. And when you first unwind that hank, it's gonna show up in this ring of yarn, this big giant ring. And you're gonna place the ring around your swift, and this would be the same if you have a traditional yarn swift. You're gonna wrap it around so that the yarn's not too tight, but it should be on there, not too loose where it's gonna fall off. And you'll notice it might be a little difficult for you to see. There's a couple spots where there's yarn that's just kind of tied and holding everything together. Let me grab my scissors real quick. Okay. And you're just going to snip those off and pull them out. Oh, and that one actually ended up being the beginning and the end of our yarn. So that is very helpful. There's a few more. Here's one. Just want to make sure that I am snipping the correct yarn. There we go. And these little bits of yarn are just wrapped around to kind of hold everything in place as much as possible. Okay, I think I got them all. You want to locate the beginning and the end of your yarn, which I have done. So I'm now going to attach the yarn to the ball winder. Some people will put a little bit of tape here just to keep it there. I don't find that that's entirely necessary. But I'm going to start, oops. There we go. I'm going to start gently, just in case we find a snag like I just did. And there we go. And then we're just going to keep cranking until the entire hank of yarn has been wound up. There are even electric ball winders so that you don't have to crank it manually, if that's something that you're interested in. I don't know, there's something almost soothing and meditative about doing this. Still keeping an eye on it just in case the yarn starts to snag. That can happen, especially as you get closer to the end. Almost done. There we go. I'm going to take the end of the yarn and and I'm just going to tuck it in so that it doesn't unravel. And one thing that I like to do, I like to take the label that comes with the yarn and fold it up, because that information on that label can be really important. So I like to refer back to it. I like to stick it on top of the winder so that I can pull my my cake up and off of it so that the yarn label is stuck on the inside. And here is our cake. That is going to be so pretty. Hope you guys thought that was fun, and I'll see you in class soon.